Jason had always been an ordinary student, living a peaceful life in a small town on Earth. He wasn't a scientist or a superhero, just someone who liked to spend his free time reading or playing video games. But all that changed one quiet afternoon when he took a walk in the nearby woods. It had been a typical afternoon, with the sun shining through the trees and birds singing in the distance. Jason wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. But as he walked deeper into the woods, he noticed something strange. A glowing light that seemed to come from nowhere. It wasn't the warm glow of the sun. It was something else entirely. Curiosity got the better of him, and he walked toward the source. As he rounded a bend in the path, his heart skipped a beat. There, sitting in a small clearing, was an alien ship. It wasn't like anything he had ever seen. The ship was sleek, with shimmering metal that seemed to shift colors depending on how the light hit it. It hovered a few feet above the ground, and a soft humming sound filled the air. Jason froze. His mind raced. Was this some kind of secret military experiment? Was it some kind of hoax? He had seen enough science fiction movies to know what it could mean, but it didn't feel like a movie set. This was real. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of what was happening. And then, as if out of nowhere, the ship's hatch opened. A figure stepped out. She was unlike anything Jason had ever seen before. She was tall, with long, silver hair that seemed to catch the light in a mesmerizing way. Her skin was a soft shade of blue, and her eyes glowed. With a pale, ethereal light, she wore a simple outfit that seemed to shimmer like her ship. But it was her presence that made Jason's heart race. She was beautiful in a way that felt almost otherworldly. The alien woman turned her head and looked directly at him. Jason couldn't move. His mind screamed at him to run, to hide, but his feet felt like they were glued to the ground. The woman didn't seem threatening, but there was something about her that felt so powerful, so different from anything he had ever known. She stepped closer and Jason finally found his voice. Hello?" He stammered, unsure of what to say. The woman smiled, and Jason couldn't help but feel a strange warmth spread through him. "I know you can understand me," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I am Lyra, from the planet Zilara. I need your help." Jason blinked, still trying to wrap his head around what was happening. "Your help?" he repeated, still feeling dizzy from the shock. Why me?" Lyra tilted her head as if the question was one she had heard before. "Because I require physical contact to survive," she said simply. "And you, human, are the only one I can rely on." Jason was confused. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. He had never heard of anything like this before. "What do you mean?" he asked finally, trying to make sense of her words. Lyra stepped closer, her presence calming yet overwhelming. "On my planet, our species needs physical connection to stay alive. Without it, we grow weak and die. We must be close to another being, one whose warmth and touch can sustain us." She looked at him with a strange intensity. "And I need you, Jason, to provide that connection." Jason stood there, completely stunned. He tried to speak, but his mind was racing too fast to find the words. An alien asking him to cuddle? It sounded insane, like something out of a bizarre dream. Yet, there she was, standing before him, looking at him like he was the key to her survival. "What do you mean by cuddle?" Jason asked, still trying to make sense of this bizarre situation. Are you serious?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. It's a requirement for my kind. I need to be close to you, to feel your warmth and your touch. It's how my body survives in this new environment. Without it, I could perish." Jason felt his heart race. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Cuddling? It felt like something out of a strange fantasy. But the way Lyra spoke, the sincerity in her eyes, made it hard to dismiss. She wasn't joking. This wasn't some kind of elaborate prank. Jason didn't know what to say. He wanted to help her, but the whole situation felt so surreal. "But how do I—" he started to ask, but his voice trailed off. What could he possibly do? He wasn't a doctor. let alone someone with any knowledge of alien biology. Lyra smiled gently, sensing his confusion. It's simple. We sit close, touch, and share warmth. It's not just physical, it's emotional too. Your presence, your touch, helps me stay strong. Jason stood there, feeling a mixture of disbelief and confusion. Part of him wanted to walk away, to run from this strange situation. But another part of him, something deep inside, felt drawn to her. There was something about Lyra that felt familiar, like she wasn't just an alien but someone who needed help. Someone who was just as lost as he felt sometimes. He took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, he said finally. I'll help you. Lyra's smile widened, and for the first time, Jason saw a hint of relief in her eyes. Thank you, she said softly. You don't know how much this means to me. Jason wasn't sure what he had just agreed to, but something told him that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet understand. The next few days were nothing like Jason had ever expected. After that strange encounter in the woods, things had shifted in his life. He couldn't stop thinking about Lyra and the strange request she had made. She wasn't a regular person. She was an alien, someone from another world. And yet she seemed so human. Lyra stayed with him in his small apartment, a secret only the two of them shared. The government had no idea she was here, and Jason had promised to keep her safe. He had no idea how long she would need to stay, or how he could truly help her. But her presence had started to feel normal. The strangest part was, he had agreed to her request. He was actually going to help her survive by doing something so simple yet so unusual. Cuddling. It had started awkwardly. When Jason sat next to her on the couch for the first time, he wasn't sure what to do. His arms felt stiff, unsure of how to place them. Lyra, however, seemed calm, even though Jason could see the nervousness in her eyes. I know this may seem strange, she said quietly, but this is how I survive. Your touch helps keep me alive. Jason nodded, trying to ignore how odd it all felt. He shifted closer, allowing their bodies to touch. She was warm, and for the first time in his life, he felt like he was doing something truly meaningful, even if it didn't make much sense. Lyra's presence was calming, and slowly, the awkwardness melted away. It felt almost like an unspoken connection forming between them. Every day, their time together felt more natural. At first, Jason had been nervous. He had never really understood why some people needed to be close to others for comfort. But now, with Lyra, it was different. There was a peace that settled over him when they cuddled, a sense of calm he hadn't experienced before. Lyra didn't talk much during their cuddling sessions, but Jason could feel the weight of her emotions, even without her speaking. It was as if her touch and presence were enough to say everything. He could sense that she was grateful, that her body relaxed and softened the longer they stayed close. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Lyra spoke up, her voice quieter than usual. In my world, we do not have the same connections as humans do. Your species is so different. You have something inside you, an ability to connect with others in ways that I never understood until now. Jason glanced at her, curious. What do you mean? Lyra's gaze shifted away from him for a moment, as though she were searching for the right words. Back on Zalara, we don't have the same kind of bonds. We live in a society where emotions are controlled. We don't hug or cuddle for comfort. It's not part of our culture. But now, being here with you, I understand something I didn't before. There's power in touch, Jason. There's power in connection. Jason didn't know what to say. He had never thought about it that way. To him, a hug or a touch was just a simple gesture, something humans did to comfort one another. But Lyra wasn't human. Her species was so different, and yet, she was starting to understand something he had always known. For a moment, the two of them just sat there in silence, their bodies close but not speaking. Jason began to understand what she meant. When he was with her, something shifted inside him too. It was as if he was able to connect with her on a deeper level, one that went beyond words. The feeling of having someone next to him sharing warmth and presence was powerful in its own way. "Does it hurt?" Jason asked, breaking the silence. "Not being able to touch anyone, back home, I mean." Lyra looked up at him, her expression soft. "It does," she admitted. "We are not allowed to form deep bonds. We are trained to stay separate, to maintain a distance. It's a way of life on Zelara, but now, I feel something different. When I'm with you, I feel safe. I feel like I'm not alone anymore." Jason didn't know how to respond to that. He was still trying to wrap his mind around the idea that an alien from another planet had come to Earth not only to survive, but to seek something as simple as touch. It felt strange, yet there was a warmth in it that he couldn't ignore. He realized that in helping her, he was also helping himself. Over time, their bond grew. It wasn't just about survival anymore. They laughed together, shared stories, and even ate meals side by side. Lyra told Jason more about her planet, about how her species had advanced in technology, but lacked emotional depth. It was as if they had everything they could ever need except the one thing that made life worth living, the ability to truly connect with another being. Jason didn't have all the answers, and he wasn't sure where their connection would take them, but he knew that something had changed inside him. He had gone from being the skeptical stranger who didn't understand the importance of a simple touch to someone who saw the value in it. Lyra had taught him that. And yet, even as their bond grew stronger, Jason still couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. Lyra had come to Earth with a purpose, but what was it? Was there more to her story than she was telling him? For now, Jason pushed those thoughts aside. He focused on the moments they shared, the peace that filled the space between them. Every time they sat together, it felt like a quiet promise, a promise of safety, of warmth, and of something he couldn't quite explain. But whatever it was, he knew he wouldn't want it any other way. Jason had never felt so torn between two emotions before. On the one hand, his connection with Lyra had deepened in ways he couldn't explain. They had become closer than he had ever expected, and every moment they spent together felt meaningful. On the other hand, there was always a question lingering in the back of his mind. What did this all mean? Was he helping her out of kindness, or was he beginning to feel something more? Something deeper? It wasn't just the physical touch anymore. It was the small things. How they laughed together over simple jokes, how they talked about their pasts, and how Jason found himself looking forward to seeing her every day. Lyra had become a part of his life, and he couldn't imagine what it would be like without her. But there were moments when doubt crept in. Was he just a means of survival for her? Was the connection they shared truly real, or was it based on her need for warmth and comfort? Jason tried not to think about it too much, but it was hard to ignore. He had never been in a situation like this before, where feelings were so complicated, where the line between kindness and affection was so blurry. One evening, after a long day of talking and spending time together, they sat side by side on the couch. The soft hum of the city outside was the only sound in the room. Lyra, her silver hair falling loosely around her shoulders, rested her head on Jason's shoulder. He could feel the warmth of her skin against his, and for a moment, everything felt right. "You know," Lyra said, breaking the silence, "I never thought I would find peace on this planet. I thought I would be alone, just going through the motions of survival. But now I understand that I wasn't looking for just survival. I was looking for connection." Jason's heart gave a small jolt. "You weren't looking for survival?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" Lyra looked up at him, her eyes full of emotions Jason couldn't fully understand. "Survival isn't just about living. It's about feeling something. About knowing that you matter, that someone else cares. On Zelara, we never had that. We lived for the sake of living, but never for the sake of others. But you..." She paused, her voice growing softer. "You've given me that." Jason didn't know how to respond. His chest tightened at the words she spoke. He wasn't sure if he had truly done anything to deserve that level of gratitude, but he knew one thing for sure. He felt something for her too. He didn't just want to help her survive. He wanted to be there for her in every way he could. They sat in silence for a while, both of them lost in their thoughts. It was moments like this that made Jason realize how much his life had changed. Before Lyra arrived, he had been content with his quiet, unremarkable existence. But now everything seemed different. She had shaken something inside him, something he hadn't even known was there. "You know," Jason said, breaking the silence, "I never really thought about connection before. I mean, I had friends, family, but it was always just surface level, nothing deep." Lyra smiled softly, her fingers brushing against his. "That's what we miss the most, Jason. We all need a little more than just the surface. We need the depth, the closeness that comes when we share ourselves with others." Jason's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden ringing of his phone. He picked it up, glancing at the screen. It was an unknown number, and something about it made him uneasy. He hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello?" he said cautiously. The voice on the other end was sharp, demanding. "Is this Jason?" Jason frowned, his stomach twisting. "Yes, who is this?" "We know about the alien you're harboring," the voice said coldly. "We need you to hand her over. Now." Jason's heart stopped. He knew exactly what this meant. The government had finally figured out that Lyra was here. They had been watching him for days, waiting for a moment to make their move. "What do you want with her?" Jason asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "That's none of your concern," the voice replied. "Just hand her over or there will be consequences." Jason's grip on the phone tightened. He could feel his pulse racing. The threat was clear, and the fear in his chest grew. He couldn't let them take her. He wouldn't. "I won't let." "You take her," Jason said firmly. "You can't just—" The voice cut him off. "You don't have a choice, Jason. You're either with us or you're against us. If you don't cooperate, things will get difficult." The line went dead and Jason was left staring at the screen in disbelief. He set the phone down slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. Lyra looked at him, sensing the change in his mood. "What's wrong?" she asked quietly. Jason took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. "It's them," he said softly. "The government. They know you're here. They want you, Lyra." Her face went pale, her eyes wide with fear. "No. They can't. Take me. I can't go back there. I won't survive." Jason reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "I won't let them take you, I promise." But even as he said the words, he knew that keeping that promise would be harder than he had ever imagined. The danger was closing in, and their time together was running out. He had to make a choice, protect her or let her go. And he didn't know if he was strong enough to do either. Jason's heart was pounding in his chest as he stared at the phone, the silence between him and Lyra thick with tension. The government knew. They knew about her, and the threat they had given him was clear: hand her over or face the consequences. He couldn't shake the fear gnawing at him, the cold feeling settling in his stomach. Lyra, still holding his hand, looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. She didn't have to say anything. Jason could see the fear in her expression. He had never seen her this afraid before. For the first time since they had met, she seemed vulnerable, not the confident, serene alien he had come to know. "I won't let them take you," Jason said again, his voice firmer this time. He had made up his mind. There was no way he would allow anyone to harm her. Not after everything they had shared. But the truth was, Jason had no idea how to protect her. The government was powerful, with resources he couldn't even imagine. They had everything: soldiers, technology, and connections. What did he have? A tiny apartment, a secret relationship with an alien, and a promise he didn't know how to keep. Lyra's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "I can't go back there, Jason. They'll use me. They'll experiment on me. I won't survive." Jason felt a lump form in his throat. He had known that Lyra had come to Earth for more than just survival, but hearing her voice crack with fear made it hit him harder. This wasn't just a mission for her. This was life and death. "We can't let them take you," Jason repeated, this time more to himself than to Lyra. His mind raced as he tried to come up with a plan, but the more he thought, the more impossible it seemed. How could they escape? Where could they go? Before he could say anything else, there was a knock on the door. Jason froze, his heart leaping into his throat. He wasn't ready for this. Not yet. He quickly looked at Lyra, who had already moved away from him, her face pale. "Stay here," Jason whispered urgently, moving toward the door. "Don't open it unless it's me." Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with fear. "Be careful." Jason stepped toward the door slowly, trying to make as little noise as possible. He peeked through the peephole, his breath catching when he saw two men in suits standing outside. They didn't look like normal visitors. They looked official, cold. And Jason knew, without a doubt, that they weren't here for a friendly chat. He took a deep breath and stepped back, considering his options. The door didn't have a chain lock, and it was too late to try to hide Lyra. He could lie to them, tell them she wasn't there, but he knew it wouldn't work. They'd find her. They'd search every inch of the apartment, and if they didn't find her, they'd be back. Jason's mind worked quickly. He needed to think of something fast, something that would give them time to escape. He glanced over at Lyra, who was standing in the corner, her expression filled with worry, but also trust. She didn't want to leave Earth. She didn't want to go back to Zalara, not to a life of isolation and cold emotion. She wanted to stay with Jason. "I'll figure something out," Jason said softly, his voice filled with determination. He had to. For her. He moved quickly, grabbing his jacket and pulling Lyra to the back door. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was their only chance. "Can you run?" he asked her quietly. Lyra nodded. "I've never run from anything before, but I can try." Jason didn't wait for any more answers. He grabbed her hand and together they moved toward the back door. But just as they were about to slip outside, the sound of a door being knocked down echoed through the apartment. The men at the front door had broken in. "Go," Jason hissed, pushing Lyra out the door. He heard her footsteps quickly fading, but he stayed behind for just a moment longer. He had to make sure they wouldn't follow her. He grabbed a few things, his phone, some money, and his keys, then bolted after her. Outside, the night air was cool and damp. Jason's heart was racing, but he didn't have time to think about anything other than getting away. He had to protect her. He spotted Lyra a few yards ahead, already running, her silver hair shimmering in the dim light of the street lamps. Her movements were graceful, fluid, like she belonged here, like she had always known how to run and escape. Jason pushed his legs harder to catch up to her. "Lyra!" he called out. She turned, her face a mixture of fear and determination. "We need to find a place to hide," she said breathlessly. Jason nodded, taking in the street around them. The city was quiet at this hour, but he knew they couldn't stay out in the open for long. They had to find a safe place. They moved quickly, ducking into an alleyway to avoid being seen. Jason's mind was spinning. He had no idea where to go. They couldn't go back to his apartment, he knew that much. They needed to get far away, to disappear, but where could they go? Who could they trust? As they caught their breath in the shadows, Jason glanced over at Lyra. She was trembling, but not from the cold. Her fear was palpable, and Jason's heart ached for her. This wasn't just about running anymore. This was about saving her life. "Won't let them take you," he whispered to her, his voice full of determination. Lyra looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude and something more. She nodded silently, taking his hand tightly in hers. For the first time, Jason felt like he wasn't just protecting her. He was starting to feel like she was protecting him too. But even as they stood there, hidden in the darkness, Jason knew that they had only begun to run. The real challenge was just beginning. Jason and Lyra had been running for what felt like hours, though the night air remained cool and crisp. The streets of the city seemed endless, and with every corner they turned, Jason felt as though they were getting farther from safety, yet no closer to escape. Lyra's grip on his hand was firm, her silver hair flowing behind her like a streak of light in the dark. She was fast, almost unnaturally so. But Jason kept up, not wanting to let her out of his sight for even a moment. They had left the city, sent her behind, and now they were in a part of town that Jason had only ever seen from a distance. The streets here were quieter, more desolate. Dim streetlights flickered overhead, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. It wasn't the ideal place to hide, but it was all they had. There was no going back to his apartment, he knew that much. The government would be searching for them by now, probably already looking at the cameras along the street, tracking their every move. Lyra, though, didn't seem afraid of the shadows or the silence. Her eyes, glowing faintly, scanned the street, ahead with a calm intensity. She didn't speak much, but Jason could sense that she was thinking, calculating. "Where are we going?" Jason asked, his voice hoarse from the run. Lyra glanced at him, her expression softening just a little. "I'm not sure. We need to find shelter, somewhere they won't be able to track us. But we can't stop moving for too long. They'll be looking for us soon." Jason nodded. He was exhausted, his legs aching from the constant movement, but the fear in Lyra's eyes kept him going. He couldn't let her down. He had made a promise, and there was no way he was breaking it. As they rounded another corner, Jason's heart skipped a beat. A black car slowly passed them on the street, moving in the opposite direction. Jason froze, his body tensing as he watched the car's headlights fade into the distance. "They're already out looking for us," Jason whispered, his voice barely audible. Lyra's hand tightened around his. "We need to be smarter. They'll have people out here watching the streets. We can't afford to be seen." Jason's mind raced. What could they do? They couldn't keep running like this forever. He had no plan, no backup. He felt like they were just two small pieces in a much larger game, and the odds were stacked against them. Lyra seemed to read his thoughts. "You're not alone in this, Jason," she said quietly. "I may be from another world, but I'm not helpless. I will protect you just as much as you're protecting me." Jason met her gaze, and for the first time, he saw something different. In her eyes, a fire, a determination. He had always seen her as the one in need of help, the one who relied on him, but now he could see that she was strong in her own way. She wasn't just an alien, she was a fighter. They continued down the empty street, ducking into an alley to avoid being seen. It was a dark, narrow space between two tall buildings, but it was better than nothing. "We can rest here for a moment," Jason said, trying to catch his breath. His voice was shaky, but he didn't care. He couldn't afford to show weakness, not now. "We need to figure out where to go next." Lyra nodded, but she didn't look as tired as Jason felt. She leaned against the brick wall of the building, her glowing eyes scanning the alleyway. "They won't stop looking for us," she said softly. "But we have an advantage. I'm not like other humans. I have abilities they don't understand." Jason's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Lyra turned her gaze to him, her expression serious. "I can hide us. I can create a barrier, something that will block their sensors, but it won't last long. We can't stay in one place for too long." Jason felt a sense of relief wash over him. "So you can protect us?" "Yes," she replied. "For a short time. But we need to move, Jason. We need to get out of the city." Jason's mind was still spinning. There was so much he didn't know about Lyra, so much he didn't understand. But right now he had to trust her. He had no other choice. "Where do we go?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "I have a place, a safe place. It's not far from here, but we'll need to move quickly." Jason nodded. He had no idea where she was taking him, but he had to follow. They didn't have time to question it. As they prepared to leave the alley, Lyra placed her hand on Jason's shoulder, her touch gentle but firm. "Stay close to me," she said, "and don't look back." Jason couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline. Whatever they were about to face, they would face it together. He had no idea what kind of dangers lay ahead, but for the first time since this whole nightmare had begun, he felt a glimmer of hope. Lyra was with him, and no matter how hard things got, he wasn't going to let her face them alone. The two of them moved quickly, slipping out of the alley and into the streets once more. The night was their only ally now, but Jason knew it wouldn't be enough to keep them hidden for long. He had to stay sharp, stay focused, and he had to believe that together they could find a way to survive. The night stretched on as Jason and Lyra moved deeper into the city. The quiet streets, once peaceful, now felt like a maze, twisting and turning at every corner. Jason's legs were starting to ache, and he could see the exhaustion in Lyra's eyes, though she tried her best to hide it. They had been running, hiding, and planning for hours, but Jason knew that they couldn't keep this up forever. The government was getting closer, and the pressure was mounting. Lyra had led him to a small, nondescript building tucked away on a side street. From the outside, it looked like any other old building in the city, with its faded paint and broken windows. But Jason could tell that this was where they needed to be. He had no idea how Lyra knew about it, but he trusted her. They slipped inside into a dark hallway that smelled of dust and age. The air was cool and still, and the only sound was the soft echo of their footsteps. Jason glanced around, unsure of what to expect, but Lyra seemed calm, almost at peace in this place. "This is it," Lyra said quietly, her voice low. "We'll be safe here for a while. They won't think to look for us in a place like this." Jason nodded, still trying to catch his breath. His mind was racing. He couldn't help but think about how much had changed in such a short time. Just days ago, his biggest concern was passing his classes and getting through the week. Now he was on the run with an alien who needed him to survive. He looked over at Lyra, who was standing by an old wooden door at the end of the hallway. Her back was straight, her posture graceful, but her eyes betrayed the exhaustion she must have been feeling. She had been through so much, leaving her planet, escaping from the government, and now hiding in the shadows of a city she barely knew. "We need to talk," Jason said, his voice quiet but urgent. "I need to know more, Lyra, about why you're here, about what's really going on. I need to understand." Lyra turned toward him, her expression thoughtful. She took a deep breath before speaking, as if gathering her thoughts. "I know I haven't told you everything, and I'm sorry for that. But I can't tell you everything all at once, it's too dangerous." Jason frowned. "What do you mean? You trust me, don't you?" "I do," she said softly. "But there are things that could put both of us in even more danger. If the government finds out about my mission, about why I'm here, it could change everything. I can't risk that." Jason's mind raced with questions, but he didn't press her further. He could see that she was struggling with something, and he wasn't about to push her when she had already shared so much. He had to trust her, even if he didn't have all the answers. They were in this together now, and that was all that mattered. "I understand," he said, his voice gentle. "But I need you to know that I'm here for you. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. I won't let them take you." Lyra's eyes softened, and for a moment, Jason thought he saw a flicker of something in her gaze, something like relief or maybe even gratitude. It made his heart swell with a feeling he couldn't name. "Thank you," she whispered. "I never expected to find someone like you on Earth. You've shown me something I didn't even know I was looking for." Jason didn't know what to say to that. Instead, he simply nodded and stepped closer, standing by her side. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time since they had met, he felt a sense of certainty. He would protect her, no matter what. They sat down on the floor of the small room, the weight of the situation settling around them like a heavy blanket. Jason glanced around at the dusty walls, the crumbling furniture, and the silence that hung in the air. It felt like they were hiding in plain sight, out of the reach of the government, but still trapped in a world that didn't fully understand them. As they sat there, Lyra broke the silence again. "There's something I need to tell you, Jason," she said quietly. "Something that I've been afraid to say." Jason looked at her, his heart skipping a beat. "What is it?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, her gaze turning distant as if she were searching for the right words. "I didn't come to Earth just to survive. That's part of it, yes, but there's more. My people sent me here on a mission that could change everything for both our worlds. Jason felt his pulse quicken. What kind of mission? Lyra met his gaze, her expression serious. My people have been searching for a way to evolve. We've outgrown our need for physical connection, for warmth, but we don't know how to live without it. We thought that Earth might have the answer. Humans seem to thrive on emotional connections, on love and warmth. I was sent here to learn about it, to see if it could save my people. Jason's mind was spinning. He had no idea that Lyra's mission was so complex. So you're not just here to survive, you're trying to help your entire species. Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, but it's not just about learning. It's about survival. If I can't find a way to help them, they will die. That's why I need to stay close to you. Your touch is the key. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. The weight of her words sank in. She wasn't just here for herself, she was here for an entire race of aliens. And somehow he had become a part of that mission. A small part, perhaps, but a part nonetheless. I don't know if I can help you with all of that, Jason said quietly, his voice shaky, but I'll try. I'll help you however I can. Lyra smiled, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and something deeper, something that spoke of trust, of connection. She reached out and touched his hand gently, her fingers warm against his skin. Thank you, Jason, she said softly. You've already given me more than I could have ever hoped for. Jason didn't have the words to respond. All he could do was sit there beside her, his hand in hers, and wonder what the future held for both of them. The weight of the situation hung heavily over Jason and Lyra as they sat together in the dim room. There was so much uncertainty, so many questions left unanswered. Jason had always thought of himself as an ordinary guy, someone who didn't get involved in anything too complicated. But now his life had become entangled with an alien's mission, a mission that could change not only Lyra's life, but the fate of her entire species. For the first time in days, the silence between them wasn't filled with tension or fear. Instead, it felt like a quiet understanding, an unspoken agreement that whatever happened next, they would face it together. Lyra had revealed more than Jason had expected. She wasn't just trying to survive. She was trying to save her people, to find a way for them to evolve past their need for physical connection, and she believed that humans held the key. Jason had never thought of himself as being anything special, but now he understood that his connection with her, something as simple as touch, was a lifeline for her and her entire race. Where do we go from here? Jason asked quietly, his voice breaking the calm. Lyra glanced at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. We need to find a way to contact my people, but we also have to be careful. The government is searching for us, and if they find out what I'm really here for, it could be disastrous. Jason nodded. He knew the risks, and he was starting to understand just how dangerous this situation could become. The government wasn't just looking for an alien. They were looking for something far more valuable, something they could use to control and exploit. If they figured out the full extent of Lyra's mission, they would stop at nothing to take her, to use her and her knowledge for their own purposes. We need to get to your people then, Jason said, determination creeping into his voice. We need to find a way to contact them before the government does. Lyra looked at him, her gaze softening. I don't know how to reach them. They've been silent for months, but I have a way to send a signal that can't be traced. If we can find the right place, the right frequency, it might work. Jason wasn't sure how he could help, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let her do this alone. Whatever it took, he would help her. He had promised to protect her, and he wasn't going back on that promise. I'll help you, he said, his voice steady. We'll figure it out. Lyra's eyes shone with gratitude, but also with something else. A deep, unspoken sadness. I never thought I would find someone like you, Jason. You're the first person to make me feel like I'm not just a tool, not just a mission. You've made me feel human. Jason reached out, taking her hand in his. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment he felt a sense of peace. Lyra had opened up to him, and he had never felt more connected to anyone in his life. He wasn't just helping her for the sake of her survival. He was helping her because he cared about her. He had never expected to find someone like Lyra, someone so different from him yet so similar in so many ways. "We'll get through this," Jason said, his voice firm. "Together." Lyra nodded, squeezing his hand gently. "Together," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. As they sat there, the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. Jason's heart raced, but he didn't panic. He had gotten used to the feeling of being hunted, of being on the edge of danger. They couldn't stay here forever, but for now they had a little time. "We should move," Jason said, standing. "Prusu, we can't stay in one place too long." Lyra followed him, her movements quick and graceful. Together they stepped into the hallway, the darkness closing around them like a protective blanket. They had come so far, but the road ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers they couldn't fully predict. They moved through the city streets, staying in the shadows, keeping their heads low. The government was still searching for them, but Jason knew they had to keep moving. Every step they took brought them closer to the edge of safety, but also closer to the truth about what Lyra had come to Earth to accomplish. As they approached the outskirts of the city, Jason's thoughts drifted to the future. What would happen when they reached Lyra's people? Would they accept her? Would they have the answers they were looking for? He didn't know, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let her face it alone. He had promised to help her, and he intended to keep that promise, no matter what. As the night grew darker and the city began to fade behind them, Jason felt a sense of resolve settle over him. They had made it this far, and they would keep moving forward. They would face whatever challenges came their way, together. And whatever happened, Jason knew that he had found something in Lyra that he never thought he would. Something worth fighting for, something worth protecting. And that was enough to keep him going.